The grace of a ballerina, the speed of a sprinter, the balance of a tightrope walker, and the endurance of a marathon runner. Add to that the unison of a drill team and the teamwork of a soccer team, and you have synchronized figure skating. Many of you have probably heard of Peggy Fleming or Michelle Kwan or maybe even Johnny Weir, but TV doesn't really show the lesser-known discipline of figure skating, which is synchronized figure skating. I've been figure skating for 10 years. This is actually my third year of being on the synchro team. I can honestly say that if it wasn't for synchro skating, I probably wouldn't be skating anymore. It's given me that drive to keep going. And because I love it so much, today I'm going to be introducing you to the topic of synchro skating. And I'm going to be discussing the brief history, the elements that make up synchro skating, and the dedication it requires. Okay, so first, I'm going to kind of introduce how synchro got started. According to the article, Figure Skating and Related Issues, the Oxford of Skating Society in England in 1838 actually started combined figure skating, but it wasn't until 1954 in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where the Hawkettes were introduced by Dr. Richard Porter. What they would do is they would perform during intermissions at hockey games, and after that, synchro, or it was actually called precision skating at the time, it began to rise, and the first precision skating championships was in 1984, and that led to even more of a rise, and it went international, because before that it was mainly in the Midwest and here in the U.S. And then finally in 1994 it became recognized as an official discipline in figure skating by the International Skating Union, and in 1998 the term synchronized figure skating was coined. And today, according to the USFSA, which is the United States Figure Skating Association, there are 525 teams in the U.S. alone, which means there are about 5,000 synchronized skaters. Okay, and now that you kind of know how synchro began, we can kind of look at the elements that make up synchronized skating. Synchronized skating is judged the same way pairs skating is judged, singles, ice dancing. I'm sure many of you have seen that on TV. It's the IJS system. There are two different scores. There's the program score, and then there's the technical element score. The technical element looks at lines, or it looks at wheels, at circles, making sure they look like circles and not blobs. And then the program component score looks at the expression of it. Are people attached? Did someone put their foot down? Are the edges of the turns good quality? And then there are actually 14 different levels of synchro skating, ranging from beginner to the adults. These are actually more of adult levels. The highest level for most skaters is the senior team. It requires you to have a certain amount of skill, and you have to be a certain age. That's how all these levels are made. So for the senior team, you have to be 14 or older, and you have to have at least the novice moves in the field test. And the moves in the field are the tests that make sure that you're kind of up to par to be at the level. So you basically always want to test 2 levels before the level you're at. So if you're skating on the senior team, you want to make sure you test novice. Or if you're on the novice team, you have to test juvenile for the moves in the field. And the moves in the field just test your extension. They test your basic skating skills like extension, speed, turns, things like that. And so I have a little video that I'm going to show that kind of shows the elements of figure skating. That way you guys can kind of see what each one is.
Let's see wheels. Elements of synchronized skating include blocks, circles, wheels, lines, intersections, moves in the field, moves in isolation, no-hold step sequences, block step sequences, circle step sequences, spins, and pair moves. the variety and difficulty.
Okay, so that kind of shows you, it gives you a little visual of what it's like to be skating. Basically, the elements are kind of like the axle for single skaters. There's a basic element, which is the axle, and then to make it more difficult, you make it a double or a triple. And it's the same thing for these. You have the circle, but to make it more difficult, you can spin it, you can travel it, you can add different steps to it. And then that really increases the points. And so now that you kind of know what some of the elements are, we can discuss the commitments that you have to have in order to be on synchro. First, you have to have the commitment of time. In order to look like this, you really have to put in the time. For example, we have four practices a week, 2 hours each day, and in addition to that, we have to skate individually for at least 4 hours during the week. So that totals to about 12 hours per week. It really makes a difference because everyone needs to be there. If there's one person missing, it throws the whole line off. So it's very important to go to practice. The monthly expenses are a very big commitment because we have a $500 payment each month plus private lessons, which most people have. I use myself as an example just because I have 2 lessons a week, which is about $320 a month, plus the freestyles, which is your individual skating time, so that's $10 per session. Let's say 5 sessions a week is $200. It's about $1,000 each month. Yes, lots of money. And the last is the individual sacrifices. In order to be on this team, we have to get up at 3:30 in the morning. So we have to be at the rink by 4:30 to practice at 4:45. It's hard, but it's definitely something that takes a lot of sacrifices. School is also one of the sacrifices, just because my senior year I had finals at the same time of the national championship. So I had to take all my finals early, make sure I was caught up with school and things like that. And another thing you really have to sacrifice is a little bit of your social life, just because you can't really be going out late and going into practice at 5 in the morning if you haven't even gone home. It doesn't work at all. I've tried. And so you really have to be so committed. There's no way teams can look good without putting any of that into it. And so today I've talked to you about the history, about the elements, and about the dedication that makes up synchronized skating. So it's a sport that really requires a lot from each individual skater, but in all honesty, I really think it's worth it. It is worth the 3:30 in the morning thing. It's worth the falls. We've had a couple of concussions before. And to me, it's definitely worth the price with all the traveling, all the friendships, and all that stuff. So I hope I've been able to spark a little bit of interest in you today about the sport of synchronized skating, and maybe you can go watch one of our performances in November.
So Alexis, what did you think?
Okay, well honestly I don't really have anything negative to say. You started out a little like, you weren't as enthusiastic looking at your cards, but once you started getting into it, it was like, you were so passionate about it, and you can like hear in your voice that you're so enthusiastic, and like, I don't know if you were just more nervous at the beginning, but halfway through you just started like not looking at your cards, and it was really good. Like, I loved your slides, like I could see the pictures really well. I mean, I didn't really know anything about synchronized ice skating before, and it's still very interesting, and yeah, it seems like you're very passionate about it, so that definitely came out in your speech. It was very well.
All right, well, I like the descriptive terms you had in your attention device building up to the revelation of what the topic is. I thought you had a very clear thesis statement and a goal for the audience. The outline was clear. You've got a nice personal story to go with your subject, so that tells us immediately, it gives us some credibility, and you move into the subject with that kind of ethos behind you. On the material itself, you've got a lot of good explanations. Some of the material needs a little bit more citation, but for instance, I thought that you did an okay job kind of explaining how the scoring is done in the 2 different manners. You presented the information about the different levels that are being competed at. that was the one place that I thought was there was some confusion, because to me, you've got this list of words in the two different columns there, and there's not really much explanation about what the difference between the columns is, or what the levels mean. And in one of the columns, I know we had the word, two of the levels seemed to be repeated. I think I had collegiate and collegiate, in a couple of spots. So there may be a little bit of overkill there. That whole section, maybe you needed to condense it a little bit and say, okay, there are novice levels and there are advanced levels, and at the advanced levels, people compete at 2 or 3 different kinds of things, and here's what the difference between them is, and keep it simple on that point instead of trying to list all of that. I'm sorry.